Um, Barry, I'm particularly keen to get you involved in this next subject because I realise, having spent such a lot of time within Stadia and dealing with budgets and the whole commercial aspect of the industry, you're a lot closer to it than the rest of us. There's been a little bit of debate today. In fact, David has been involved. I've been involved. I think Jonathan Kay's had his pretty two pennyworth in, talking about the commerciality of the industry. And basically, I'm interested to know where you think the line is as to what GBGB can achieve or can't achieve within the ground industry. At what point does it get involved in the commercial side of things?
Well, I think the two are clearly defined. I mean, obviously the post was created by the GBGB as commercial director, although it's encompassing in most people's minds some form of marketing as well. But I think from past experience, the marketing of the industry of greyhound racing itself really should be localized. I think if you take it to the extent where the whole of the industry is, or the profile of the industry is trying to be raised through some sort of national advertising, it has to be consistent, it has to be prolonged, and but it's very, very expensive. I think, you know, from my experience, marketing at the local level is what is the most successful, because you know your customer, you know where they're coming from, you know what your track can offer, and you can market it in that way. The problem is now, I think, that promoters have to be willing to market and promote their own stadia. And I'm not sure that the appetite is there for it, particularly after COVID and particularly after the very good media deals that are out there at the moment. Some promoters would find that keeping the doors closed and operating as a closed environment and taking the media money would be far more profitable than manning the track up, marketing and dealing with customers coming through the door. So I don't think the appetite is there. I think what the GBGB should be doing is raising the profile of the industry from a commercial point of view. But the thing there is that this job was created by the GBGB, and I'm assuming it's the promoters that are paying for this through special license fees. I don't think they were ever consulted about what the sort of person was that was needed, what the job description would be, what the objectives would be, and I don't think anybody knows what they are. And what does success look like? I mean, up until now, we've heard about track timers, you know, and maybe they could be sponsored, and that was something Mark Moisley was getting himself involved with. I'm not sure that any track has taken advantage of that. I don't know who would be sponsoring those timers, but again, you know, if you looked at it nationally, maybe you get Rolex. It's probably turned into Timex now, to be honest, over this period of time. But you know, that there has to be some national advertising, some national awareness, and some feedback from the GBGB. I mean, what is happening with those timers? What is happening with the van deal that Mark put together? You know, how many trainers have taken advantage of that? So, you know, it's very disappointing that we don't get that feedback. And quite honestly, if you're not getting feedback, then your immediate thought is, well, it's not successful and it's being hidden. You know, the lack of results are being hidden under the carpet. So, you know, there has to be transparency. But I don't think from an industry point of view, the GBGB have the finances to raise the awareness to the extent where people are coming to the tracks because of what they're seeing nationally. You have to do it on a local basis. You know, that also has to be policed. I'm going on a little bit here, but I mean, for years, there used to be a funding from the GBGB of 10,000. I think in my day, it went up to 15,000 a year. But the reality was that money was being used offset some of the operational costs, and anything that remotely could be attached to marketing, that was being used to actually justify that finance, and I think that was money wasted. But again, I come back to, you know, the current climate and whether or not there is the appetite there from the promoters to go out and try and get increased footfall through the turnstiles.
Dave, what's your thought on it? I mean, and I'm coming at it from an angle that you're very tech savvy. We are now moved on from a stage in life where, I don't know, there were four TV channels, shall we say, and advertising related to them. Now, advertising, particularly for a younger age group, is going to be probably social media based. What do you think Greyhound Board should be doing, and do you think it is the organisation that should be doing it? What levels can it go to?
But it's an interesting point. You could come at it from different angles. What is the GBGB? What is their remit? What is the track? What's the track's remit? I do agree with what Barry's saying, that you're going to know your local demographic. If you're a Romford or whatever it is, you're going to know the local area and what suits their appetite for going to the greyhound racing. But I think the GBGB have put themselves in a position now where they've hired somebody who's a commercial director. And this isn't just a dig at Mark Moisley, it's other positions as well. When you hire someone into a position, it's stakeholders expect some results from it. And I understand what Barry's saying. We've seen little bits and bobs with timers and different things. And you expect to get some sort of feedback. And we haven't had that feedback, which has then led to people think, well, what's going on? But then it always comes back to, what is the GBGB's remit? Now, I do think in recent times, social media, all tracks have improved massively on social media. I couldn't pick individual tracks out and say they haven't done this or done that, because they have. I mean, I was heavily involved in setting the stream of trials up, and it seems that tracks are really pushing that out. But it does bring up this grey area of what the GBGB are, and we see a lot of welfare initiatives. But when it comes to the commercial side, is it purely down to tracks, or do the GBGB have, or are they wanting some kind of control over the commercial direction of the sport?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back to Barry. I mean, the thing that occurs to me is this: if there is for a start, there isn't a great deal of money involved, because we've all agreed that. I mean, I think funding is now 7 million. There's a huge amount of that's going to go out in welfare in one form or another. No matter what's left, 500,000 or whatever, between all those tracks spread so wide apart. I mean, why would you want to try to advertise for an audience, I don't know, much beyond, I'd say, Swindon? I mean, there's nothing in the south of England, any kind of advertising, I say southwest of England. There's great areas where there's nothing at all. There's certainly nothing in the middle of London. There's nothing in Birmingham, or at least the Hall Green side of Birmingham, as was. Barry, do you feel that when we get into discussions between, shall we say, the Racing Partnership on one side and SIS on another, is there even a role for GBGB in there?
Well, yeah, I think that's a debatable point, and it's a very good question. I think we've got to be realistic here. Firstly, our industry has reduced substantially over the years. We're down to what, 16 tracks now that are licensed. I don't know what the footfall is amongst those 16. Obviously, some get very little. In fact, some open their doors not to the public anyway. We've got obviously Suffolk Downs, is it? Yeah, Suffolk Downs now racing, and that's, the facilities there are poor because it's just started, and full marks to Kevin for opening another track, and it's got to be good for the industry. But at the end of the day, are we looking for attendance? And that is the underlying question. I mean, we talk about 7 million coming into to the GBGB, and that's mostly, as you say, going for animal welfare. But the reality is the bookmakers are paying something like 70 million a year for the product, and 70 million pounds a year is coming into the industry, and it's how that's managed. It's not all down to the GBGB. It's not all down to the BGRF. It's down to promoters and the way in which they use that money to best promote the industry. At the moment, the question is, do we want customers, and do promoters want to spend that extra cash on bringing people through the door when they're making probably as much, if not more, by keeping the doors effectively closed?
Mitch?
I absolutely agree with that. I've been to tracks, and I've named the track when we were having discussing George, Yarmouth. Yarmouth, out of all the tracks in the country, they want footfall. They want people in there. They'll do everything to make your time there an enjoyable one. I've been to tracks, and I'm not going to name names. I've been to tracks where I do believe that the media money they would be happy with, and they would rather shut the doors. This is a spectator sport, and we all fell in love with the sport by going to watch the Greyhounds. We didn't fall in love with the sport by going to the bookies and watching it on a screen. And I think if tracks are going down the route of let's maximize the profit by just the media deals and forgetting about the public, they're in for a rude awakening, because they'll just end up closing. I can't see them having any kind of long-term sustainability or long-term goal in the sport by just expecting the media money and not getting spectators through the door.
Being devil's advocate here and being awkward, I could go down a route and say, well, they are commercial businesses. If they could justify keeping the doors closed, that's potentially their right. Much as we hate it, much as we're all Greyhound people, I guess it's more a case of saying to them, in the long term, this will work against you. In the long term, you won't have owners, so you won't have dogs, you won't have people wanting to breed dogs. Is there perhaps a sense of sort of short-termism? What do you think, Barry?
Well, I'm trying not to be too negative here, but I think I said in my last article that that was posted on the Greyhound Star that Greyhound racing will survive for as long as the bookmakers want it, and that's the reality of it, because there is a price to pay. That price, as I've said, is probably 70 million a year that's coming into the industry from the bookmaking world. But there are so many other sports that they could make or have a turnover as great with. And there'll come a time when they probably look at what they're paying for it, and they'll say, well, do we really want this at that price? And then a negotiation would have to take place. I think from a commercial point of view, these promoters have signed long-term deals. I mean, these aren't 6-month deals or a handshake. You know, most of them are on a 5-year rolling type contract. So they know that they're from a financial point of view, they've got the income coming in. It's whether or not they want to promote the sport and whether or not they want the footfall. I mean, there's so many factors that one has to take into account if you are a promoter. Firstly, staffing these entities. I mean, I think the reality is there's only one track on a Saturday night that runs without tracks, and that's Towcester. Everyone else wouldn't run unless they had a media deal. It's as simple as that. So there has to be, you know, some understanding of what's going on in the industry, and you know, to an extent, you're right that the promoters, it's their businesses, they can do as they want with them. Trouble is, there is no unity within the industry. There's too much self-interest. There has been the 20 years I was general manager. Too much self-interest throughout the industry, and at the end of the day, they look at the bottom line, and this is what we're making. This is guaranteed for 5 years. It's on a rolling type contract. So yeah, we'll do a little bit, but we don't have to break our necks trying to get people through the door, and that's the problem we have.